Chiara Bianchi was a woman whose life was measured in late shifts and unfinished dreams. Her only goal was to finish university and keep her integrity intact in a city that rarely rewarded either. Chiara Bianchi had just finished wiping down table 7 at Trattoria Alberto when she noticed the black leather wallet resting on the seat. For a moment she froze, her heart thudding in her chest. The dinner rush had ended, and the restaurant was finally quiet, save for the clinking of cutlery being cleared away by her co-workers. In the soft golden glow of the chandeliers, the wallet stood out, a dark, expensive-looking accessory that hadn't been there minutes before. She reached out hesitantly, fingers brushing the smooth leather. It was heavy in her hand. The edge of a thick stack of euro notes peeked out from inside, and Chiara swallowed hard. That's more money than I make in months, she thought, throat tight. A poor university student juggling her studies and this waitressing job, Chiara constantly scraped to pay rent on her tiny apartment in Naples and send a little extra home to help her mother in their village. Now, here in her grasp, was possibly a small fortune. Her chest constricted at the temptation. She glanced around. No one else seemed to have noticed the forgotten wallet yet. A battle raged inside her. It would be so easy to slip it into her apron pocket. No one would know. The mysterious man who dined alone at table 7 had left just moments ago. He was a blind man, or at least that's what she had believed. He had navigated with a cane, dark sunglasses perched on a strong nose, and an air of quiet dignity. Surely someone like that would be vulnerable on the busy city streets at night. The thought pricked her conscience. "Chiara, you okay?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. Julia, a fellow waitress and Chiara's closest friend at work, approached with a curious frown. Chiara instinctively closed the wallet in her hand. But Julia had already seen the glint of cash. Her eyes widened. "Dio mio, is that money?" Julia whispered, her gaze darting to the cash-filled wallet. Immediately, Chiara felt a flush of guilt. She shouldn't be hiding this, but some part of her feared Julia's reaction. "It's a customer's," Chiara said quickly, voice low. "The man from table 7 must have dropped it." Julia's eyebrows shot up. "The blind guy? He left that behind?" she asked incredulously. The two women exchanged a look, both aware of how stuffed the wallet appeared. Julia let out a low whistle. "He'll never know who took it if it's gone." Chiara's heart skipped. "Julia!" she hissed, shocked. She knew Julia could be pragmatic, but was she seriously suggesting? Julia held up her hands. "Hey, I'm just saying. The man's clearly loaded. Look at that thing. And he's blind, Chiara. He probably doesn't even know he dropped it. If you hand it to the boss," she jerked her chin toward their manager at the bar, "there's a good chance it never gets back to him anyway." Chiara bit her lip. She hated how plausible that sounded. Their manager, Signor Conti, was not known for his honesty. He might claim he'd return it but pocket some cash for himself. Naples could be a harsh place. Everyone was looking out for themselves. But that didn't make it right. She thought of the man who had sat at table 7. He had spoken very little, but he'd been unfailingly polite. With a deep, gentle voice, Chiara remembered guiding his hand to the wine glass and describing menu items aloud at his request. He had listened with a slight smile on his lips, as though amused by something, though he hardly said a word beyond thanks. There had been something enigmatic about him, his stillness, perhaps, or the way he seemed to sense her presence even without sight. When he tapped his way out with his cane, alone, she'd worried briefly about him finding his way. Now that same man's wallet was literally in her hands. It felt like fate had thrown her a lifeline, one she wasn't sure if she should grab. She could pay off 2 semesters of tuition with this cash, maybe move somewhere better than her damp little flat above the bakery. Her tired eyes stung at the thought of relief it could bring. Yet she knew the gnawing guilt would never leave her if she kept what wasn't hers. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "We are not rich, Chiara, but we have our honesty." It was something Mama had always instilled in her. Taking this money would betray that. Chiara straightened her shoulders. "I have to give it back," she said quietly, resolving herself. Before Julia could protest further, Chiara spun on her heel and dashed toward the door. The humid summer night air hit Chiara as she pushed out onto the cobbled street. Her eyes darted left and right frantically. Please still be here. A few pedestrians strolled under the street lamps, and Vespas whined in the distance. Then she spotted him, the tall figure with the cane, tapping gingerly along the sidewalk across the street. Relief and adrenaline surged through her. "Signore, aspetti, wait!" Chiara called, voice high with urgency as she jogged across the narrow road. The man paused, turning his head slightly toward her. Under the amber glow of a street lamp, he cut an impressive silhouette, broad-shouldered in his tailored suit, dark hair reflecting a hint of the light. He wore those opaque sunglasses still, even at night. Chiara approached, breathless. You forgot your wallet, she said, extending the item. The man's face registered mild surprise. Up close, Kiara noticed the sharp line of his jaw, the few strands of silver at his temples that gave him a distinguished look. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, far older than her 22 years, and carried himself with an elegant confidence even now. He let out a soft chuckle of disbelief. "My wallet?" he repeated, voice smooth and rich with a Neapolitan accent. I must be more tired than I realized. Thank you, Signorina." His hand came up, groping gently in the air. Chiara realized he couldn't see where she held it, and carefully guided the wallet into his outstretched palm. His fingers brushed against hers. Just a fleeting touch, but it sent an unexpected warmth up her arm. When he felt the wallet, his eyebrows lifted. "It feels much lighter than before," he said gravely. Chiara's heart skipped. Lighter? Had someone... But before panic could settle, a small smile tugged at the corner of the man's mouth. "Scherzo," he murmured. "A joke." He opened the wallet deftly and thumbed through the bills with his gloved hand, seeming to count by touch. "Everything is here. You really chased after me to return this?" Chiara nodded, then realized he couldn't see that. "Yes, of course," she affirmed hastily. "It wouldn't have been right to keep it." The man tilted his head, regarding her with those concealed eyes. For a second, Chiara wondered what color they were, what expression lay behind the dark lenses trained in her direction. He's probably just staring blankly, she reminded herself. But something about his posture made it feel like he was truly looking at her. "Not everyone would agree," he said after a moment, his tone thoughtful. "You've done me a great kindness, Miss..." "Oh, Chiara?" she supplied. "Chiara Bianchi. Signorina Bianchi," he repeated, the formal address rolling off his tongue smoothly. "Thank you. In a city like this, honesty is a rare virtue." Chiara felt heat rise to her cheeks at his praise. I couldn't keep something that isn't mine, especially not from you." She bit her lip, realizing how that might sound. "I mean, because you might need it being on your own out here," she added awkwardly, not wanting to reference his blindness too bluntly. He gave a gentle nod. "Still, it takes integrity to do what you did." He reached into the wallet and pulled out one of the larger notes. Though she couldn't see his eyes, Chiara sensed his gaze on her face. "Please, take this, as a token of my appreciation." Her mouth fell open at the $500 note he held toward her. "Oh no, I can't accept that," Chiara stammered, raising her hands in refusal. "It was nothing, really. I only did what anyone should do." The man chuckled softly. Anyone should, perhaps, but not anyone would. He gently took her hand, pressing the bill into it. His touch was light yet firm. "Indulge me," he said. "Consider it a very belated tip for your service tonight, Chiara." Chiara's principles wavered at the sight of the generous tip. 500 euros could cover a month of rent, but it still felt like too much. "Thank you truly, but you don't have to," she began to protest. He held up a hand, smiling. "I insist. You've earned it." There was a finality in his tone that made Chiara fall silent. She curled her fingers around the bill, deciding it would be rude to reject it outright. "Thank you, signore," she said softly. She realized she still didn't know his name. As if reading her thoughts, the man added, "My name is Lorenzo." He hesitated, then gave a slight, self-deprecating smile. "Forgive me, I usually don't have to introduce myself. I'm not used to meeting new people these days." Lorenzo. She repeated it in her mind, liking the way it sounded. "It's nice to meet you, Lorenzo." "The pleasure is mine." Lorenzo dipped his head in a courteous nod. "And thank you again, Chiara. You've given me more than you know tonight." Before she could question that odd statement, he added, "Will you be working tomorrow evening?" Chiara blinked at the sudden question. Yes, I work most evenings, after my classes." Why was he asking? Was he planning to come back? The thought inexplicably fluttered in her stomach. "Then perhaps I will see you again." He smiled, an expression that transformed his stern features surprisingly. "Figuratively speaking, of course," he added lightly, tapping the edge of his glasses. A small laugh escaped her. "Of course." With that, Lorenzo tucked his wallet securely into his inner jacket pocket and adjusted his grip on his cane. Chiara noticed then a sleek black car idling at the curb just a few paces away. A driver in a crisp suit stood by the rear door, watching them with a polite, neutral expression. He must have been waiting for Lorenzo this whole time. Lorenzo offered Chiara a final nod. "Buonanotte, Chiara," he said in his rich voice. "Buonanotte," she replied gently. "Good night." She watched as the driver stepped forward and guided Lorenzo's elbow lightly to help him into the back seat of the car. For an instant, as Lorenzo lowered himself into the car, he turned his face toward Chiara once more. Through the tinted car window, she caught the faintest reflection of her own figure under the streetlights and wondered what he saw, if anything, behind those dark shades. Then the door shut, and the black car pulled smoothly away from the curb and vanished down the lane. Chiara stood there for a moment under the street lamp's glow, the generous $500 note still clasped in her hand, and her heart fluttering inexplicably. The night air was warm and heavy with the scent of the sea drifting from the bay. Finally, she realized she should get back inside and finish cleaning up. Clutching the money, she turned and headed back toward the restaurant, her mind racing with the events of the evening. Inside, Julia was waiting near the entrance, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Well?" she demanded quietly the moment Chiara stepped back through the door. "Did you catch him?" Chiara nodded, her emotions still swirling. She unclenched her fist to reveal the $500 note. Julia's jaw dropped. "Madonna Santa. He gave you all that?" Julia breathed. A couple of the other waiters who were stacking chairs nearby glanced over curiously. Chiara hurried to stuff the bill safely into her apron pocket, suddenly self-conscious. "Shh, it's just a tip," she whispered, though a part of her still couldn't believe it. He insisted. Julia let out a low laugh of amazement. "I guess honesty does pay, huh?" She nudged Chiara playfully. "I told you that man was loaded. A blind guy rolling up in a car like that. Must be some kind of billionaire or something. Maybe he's royalty." Her eyes sparkled with teasing. Chiara shook her head, cheeks warming. "Stop. He's just generous, I think. He was very kind. And charming, no?" Julia waggled her brows. The way he talked, all polite and old-fashioned, kind of romantic if you ask me. She sighed dramatically, and Chiara couldn't help but laugh. "Finish closing up, you two. No dilly-dallying," came the brusque voice of Signor Conti from the bar. The heavyset manager gave them a sharp look. Clearly he had an eye on that fat tip, too, if he could find a way to claim it. "Yes, sir," Chiara replied promptly. As the two young women returned to stacking chairs on tables and wiping surfaces, Julia leaned in close to murmur, "So are you going to see him again? Did he say anything?" There was a note of intrigue in her tone. Chiara bit back a smile. "Actually, he asked if I'd be working tomorrow night." Saying it aloud made her stomach do a small flip. "Oh-ho, he did he?" Julia grinned. "Sounds like a man who enjoyed the service." She winked. "Maybe Signor Misterioso will become a regular." "Julia, stop it." Chiara chided lightly, though she couldn't completely hide her own curiosity. Would Lorenzo actually return? And why did the prospect make her heart race? She hardly knew him, yet something about the encounter, his gentle manners, the way he seemed to truly appreciate her honesty, had left an impression she couldn't shake. By the time the closing tasks were done, and Chiara's feet ached and her mind had begun to come down from the evening's excitement, Julia gave her a quick hug before they parted ways outside. "Text me when you get home safe," her friend said, eyeing the dark streets. "And don't spend that cash all in one place." Chiara rolled her eyes and promised, grateful as always for Julia's looking out. As she walked the few blocks to her apartment, Chiara replayed the night's events in her head. The city was quieter now, storefronts dark and shutters pulled down, though a few late-night scooters buzzed past on the main road. She kept to the pools of light under each street lamp, alert, but not overly worried. This neighborhood, just east of the university, was relatively safe. Still, she couldn't help glancing over her shoulder now and then. Her thoughts drifted to Lorenzo. She found herself wondering about him. Why was he alone? He clearly had means, given the driver and his tailored suit. And there was an aura about him, something refined, even powerful, that seemed out of place for a man wandering without sight. She pictured the way he had smiled in gentle amusement, how confident he appeared despite his condition. Most patrons who came in with canes or wheelchairs often carried a sadness or frustration, but not Lorenzo. If anything, he seemed to embrace the darkness around him like an old friend. At her apartment building's iron gate, Chiara paused. In the silence, the distant hush of waves from the Bay of Naples reached her ears. The sea breeze ruffled her ponytail. She closed her eyes briefly and breathed in the salty night air, her mind still on the mysterious stranger who had stepped briefly into her world. He said perhaps he'd see me again. The thought made her chest warm. Chiara knew it was foolish to fantasize. He was likely just being polite. But as she climbed the narrow stairs to her tiny flat, she realized she genuinely hoped he would return. "Get a hold of yourself," she murmured as she unlocked her door. Inside, the apartment was dark and stuffy. She flicked on a lamp, illuminating a space scarcely larger than Lorenzo's car had been. Sighing, Chiara kicked off her shoes and fell onto her creaky bed, exhausted. The $500 note burned in her pocket. She pulled it out and set it on her bedside table, just staring at it for a long moment. Part of her still felt guilty for accepting it. "You earned it," she whispered, repeating his words as if to convince herself. If nothing else, it would lighten her burdens a little this month. Before long, Chiara's eyelids grew heavy. As she drifted to sleep, her last thoughts were of a tall man with a kind smile and secrets hidden behind dark glasses. In the back seat of the sleek black car, idling just around the corner, Lorenzo removed his sunglasses and exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. His cool gray eyes, freed from their dark cover, glinted with satisfaction. "All went well, sir?" the driver asked in Italian as he glanced at his passenger through the rear-view mirror. Lorenzo's lips curved slowly. He slid open the wallet on his lap once more, though he already knew the answer. Every banknote was intact. More importantly, the earnest concern in Chiara's voice as she chased him down still echoed in his ears. "Yes, Matteo," he murmured. "Very well." She returned it without a second's hesitation. He tapped a finger thoughtfully against the leather. "Miss Bianchi is an interesting young woman." Matteo, the driver, nodded knowingly. "Shall I look into her background?" he asked. In his line of work for Lorenzo, it was a routine offer. Lorenzo gazed out the window, where the lights of the trattoria glimmered. Through the front window, he could just make out Chiara re-entering, Giulia rushing to her side. He felt a strange protectiveness at the sight. "Yes," he said quietly, his voice decisive. "I want to know everything about her." As Matteo pulled the car away into the night, Lorenzo leaned back against the leather seat. He closed his eyes that had witnessed more of the dark truths of this world than he cared to admit, and found himself smiling at the memory of Chiara's earnest brown eyes gazing up at him. Honesty, loyalty, these were qualities he valued above all else. And tonight, in a humble waitress, he had discovered a rare gem. He hadn't planned on any of this beyond a simple test, and yet, as Naples slumbered under the watch of the distant volcano, Lorenzo felt the stirrings of something unexpected in his chest. He never expected what might come next. The next day, Chiara found herself unusually anxious as evening approached. She spent far too long deciding what to wear to work, eventually settling on the same uniform of black slacks and crisp white blouse, of course, but making sure her hair was neatly pulled back and even dabbing on a touch of lipstick. "Why am I fluttering like this?" she chided herself. "It's just a shift like any other." But deep down, she knew she was hoping to hear the tap of that cane again, to see Lorenzo's tall form appear at the door of Trattoria Alberto. By the time the dinner rush began, Chiara had almost convinced herself that last night's encounter was a one-off. Maybe Lorenzo wouldn't come after all. Perhaps a man like him, wealthy, mysterious, had merely been passing through. As she balanced plates of steaming pasta and weaved between tightly packed tables, she tried to push thoughts of him aside. Still, each time the entrance bell tinkled, announcing a new customer, her heart gave an involuntary leap. It was just past 8 when she heard Giulia's sharp intake of breath. "Look who's back," Giulia muttered under her breath, nudging Chiara subtly while pouring water at the neighboring table. Chiara followed her friend's gaze. There he was. Lorenzo stood at the threshold, one hand on his black cane, the other lightly tracing the doorframe as if orienting himself. He had traded yesterday's suit for a charcoal gray one that fit him impeccably. Even without seeing his eyes, Chiara could sense a certain alertness in the way he held himself. The sight of him sent an unexpected thrill through her. Chiara stepped forward immediately. "Buonasera, Signor Lorenzo," she greeted warmly, using his first name since he had given it. She hoped it wasn't too forward. A smile touched Lorenzo's lips at her voice. "Good evening, Chiara. I was hoping that was you." Her cheeks warmed. "Would you like your same table?" she asked. "If it's available." "For you always," she said playfully, then caught herself. But Lorenzo chuckled. seeming pleased at her familiarity. She guided him to table 7 again, an intimate corner with a view toward the street. He settled into his seat gracefully. "It's a bit louder tonight," he observed. Indeed, and the Friday crowd was lively, with clinking glasses and laughter swelling in the little trattoria. "Would you prefer a quieter spot? Perhaps farther from the kitchen?" Chiara asked, concerned. He shook his head. "No, this is fine. I like hearing life around me." He paused, then added in a lower voice, "And I can hear you best from here." Chiara's heart did a little flip. Was he implying he came here to hear her? She busied herself with handing him a menu, unsure how to respond. "Shall I read the specials again tonight?" she offered. "Please." Lorenzo leaned back, attentive. As she read out the dishes, Tuscan ribollita soup, fresh linguine ai frutti di mare, slow roasted lamb with herbs, she noticed he was smiling softly. It made her strangely happy to see him at ease. After taking his order, he opted for the linguine and a glass of Barolo wine. Chiara left to place it, but found herself glancing over at table 7 more often than necessary. Lorenzo sat calmly, cane resting by his chair. Unlike most diners dining solo, he wasn't on a phone or fidgeting. He simply sat, seemingly content to soak in the ambient sounds, the clatter from the open kitchen, couples chatting, the distant chords of a mandolin in the background music. A couple of nearby patrons cast curious glances at the striking blind man with the expensive suit, but Lorenzo appeared oblivious. Julia caught Chiara looking. While passing by with a tray, she whispered, "If you stare any harder, you'll drill a hole in him." Chiara tore her eyes away, face burning. "I'm just making sure he's okay," she protested quietly. Her friend smirked. "Sure, molto bene, I'd say." Julia moved on before Chiara could retort. When Chiara returned to Lorenzo's table with his wine, she found him lightly tracing the rim of the glass that had been set earlier. "Your Barolo, sir," she announced, gently guiding his fingers to the stem once more as she'd done the night before. He nodded in thanks and took an appreciative sniff of the deep red wine. I recognize this aroma. 2015, is it?" Chiara blinked in surprise. "Yes, it is. You know your wines." Lorenzo gave a modest shrug. "Loss of one sense can sometimes sharpen the others. I've learned to discern a good wine by smell alone. Though I admit, I do miss seeing the color." He said it casually, but Chiara heard a hint of wistfulness in his tone. It made her chest ache. "I'm sure it's a beautiful ruby red," she described softly. "Almost mahogany at the edges, and it pairs perfectly with the seafood pasta." His smile returned. "Thank you, Cara." The endearment slipped out, meaning nothing more than dear in Italian, but it made Chiara's pulse quicken. She busied herself adjusting his place setting, hoping to hide her fluster. As the evening went on, Chiara found moments to chat with Lorenzo in between her duties. He asked about her studies, and she shyly admitted she was finishing a degree in literature. "Ah, a lover of books," he remarked. "No wonder you read the menu so beautifully." That comment earned a laugh from her. In turn, Chiara learned small snippets about him. He mentioned having traveled a lot for work when he was younger, though he kept the details vague. "These days I stay mostly around Naples. I prefer familiar surroundings now," he said. Chiara had the impression of a man who had seen much of the world, perhaps too much. There was a subtle weight behind his words, as if unspoken stories lingered beneath. At one point, a neighboring table, a group of loud businessmen well into their 3rd bottle of Prosecco, grew boisterous. One of the men made an offhand, insensitive joke about the blind leading the blind, clearly audible. Chiara, horrified, shot them a sharp glare while refilling another table's water. Before she could intervene or apologize on the restaurant's behalf, Lorenzo himself responded, turning his head calmly toward the drunken man. "I may be blind, signore," he said in an even voice loud enough to carry, "but even I can see that your manners are lacking." A few nearby patrons snickered. The businessman flushed red, muttering an apology under his breath. He and his colleagues quickly sank back into their drinks, chastened. Chiara couldn't help but grin as she approached Lorenzo's side. "I'm so sorry about that," she said, lowering her voice. "Some people... There's no need to apologize for others." Lorenzo replied gently. "Besides, you were ready to defend me, weren't you?" His head tilted as if he could sense her indignation on his behalf. Chiara admitted, Yes, no one should be disrespected like that in here." His expression softened. "You have a kind heart, Chiara, and courage." She ducked her head, not sure what to say to that. Thankfully, the arrival of his linguine gave her a task to focus on. She carefully described the layout of the plate to him. Pasta at 6 o'clock, clams at 12, mussels at 3 and 9, a sprig of parsley on top. It was something she'd learned to do with visually impaired customers in a disability awareness workshop. She hoped it was helpful. "Perfect," Lorenzo said, and as he sampled the dish, his pleased sigh indicated the food was to his liking. Chiara left him to enjoy the meal while she tended to other tables. Throughout the night, she found herself drawn back to Lorenzo's table again and again. He never demanded her attention, but whenever she had a spare moment, she gravitated there to ask if he needed anything else, or simply to chat a little more. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Lorenzo had a dry, subtle sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh, and when he laughed, quiet and deep, she felt an absurd sense of triumph at having elicited that warmth from him. By the end of the evening, Chiara realized she had spent far more time at table 7 than she probably should have. Luckily, Julia and the others were covering her other tasks without complaint, no doubt all of them curious about this unusual patron who had captured Chiara's focus. When Lorenzo finished and requested the check, Chiara brought it to him. He produced a sleek black credit card from his wallet this time. As she carefully placed it back into his hand after swiping it, he gently closed his fingers over hers. "Thank you for your wonderful service and company," he said, his thumb briefly grazing the back of her hand. Chiara's breath caught. She hoped the dim lighting hid the flush in her cheeks. "It was my pleasure." Truly, he released her hand slowly and stood as she moved to pull out his chair. "Until next time, then," he said. She bit her lip, suppressing a smile. "Have a good night, Lorenzo." Matteo, the driver, appeared just outside as Chiara walked Lorenzo to the door. The night was balmy and quiet, now that most diners had gone. Ever professional, Matteo gave a polite nod. "Good evening, miss," he said, remembering her from before. She returned the nod as Lorenzo got into the car, offering a final wave in Chiara's direction. She wasn't sure if he could make out her shape, but she waved anyway. Julia was all over her the instant the black car disappeared into the traffic. "Girl, spill," she demanded while they cleared the last table. "You two were practically in your own world all night. I've never seen you so smitten." Chiara fumbled with a stack of plates. "I was just being friendly, Julia. He's a nice man. A nice, rich, attractive man who clearly enjoys your friendly service," Julia teased. "He asked for you specifically when he came in. And that little handhold at the end? Santo cielo. I thought you were going to melt into a puddle on the floor." Chiara nearly dropped the plates, mortified. "Was it that obvious?" she groaned. "Only to everyone with eyes." Julia laughed, then bit her tongue exaggeratedly. "Oops, poor choice of words, but you know what I mean." The chemistry was palpable. Heat crept up Chiara's neck. Was she that transparent? She didn't want to embarrass Lorenzo or make him the subject of gossip. "It's nothing like that. He's just a generous patron. I'm sure he's like that with everyone." Julia gave her a look. "Sure. Keep telling yourself that, amica. All I know is he's been here 2 nights in a row and only ever wants you to serve him. I think a 3rd night will seal it. He's officially enamored." She winked. Chiara mumbled a half-hearted protest, but her mind was already drifting to the possibility. Would he come again tomorrow? The thought made her stomach flutter with anticipation and anxiety in equal measure. To Chiara's quiet delight, and growing confusion at her own feelings, Lorenzo did return the next evening, and the evening after that. In fact, over the next couple of weeks, he became a regular fixture at Trattoria Alberto, always arriving around the same time in the evening, always requesting to sit in Chiara's section. With each visit, their rapport deepened. Chiara found that Lorenzo had a way of drawing her out of her shell. He would ask her about the book she was reading for class and listen intently as she animatedly described her favorite novels. In turn, he shared tidbits about cities he'd visited, Paris, Buenos Aires, Hong Kong, painting vivid pictures with words of their sounds and scents and personalities. It was as though, lacking sight, he had compensated by savoring the world in other ways, and he made Chiara imagine places she'd only dreamt of. Despite his guardedness about personal details, Lorenzo occasionally let slip a telling remark. Once, when she asked if he had family nearby, a shadow passed over his face. "My parents are gone," he said quietly. "I have a few colleagues I consider family, but no siblings, no wife or children." He had quickly changed the subject, and Chiara hadn't pried further, but she sensed loneliness there, beneath his refined exterior. For her part, she spoke of her own family, her widowed mother back in a small town in Campania, whom Chiara sent money to when she could, her younger brother who was studying to be a mechanic. "I'm the first to attend university," she mentioned, not without pride. Mama worked so hard to make it possible. Lorenzo had smiled at that and said her mother must be very proud of her. Sometimes, between serving other tables, Chiara would simply sit with Lorenzo for a few stolen minutes, especially on slower nights. They shared light jokes, like the time she nearly tripped and spilled coffee but managed not to, and he quipped that he would have caught the cup if it fell, a comment that made her laugh and say she doubted his reflexes were that good. He only smirked mysteriously. In those moments, Chiara nearly forgot that this was a customer at all. Talking with him felt natural, right? Yet amid the warm glow of their growing friendship, Chiara occasionally felt an undercurrent of something unspoken. At times, Lorenzo would go quiet, as if listening to things beyond the restaurant's walls. He often sat facing the door. More than once she noticed his jaw tighten subtly when a group of rough-looking men entered, only for him to relax when they left without incident. Chiara chalked it up to how vulnerable one might feel being blind in public. A constant vigilance, perhaps. Still, it made her wonder if he had reason to be especially cautious. One night, as she walked him to his car, Lorenzo suddenly reached out and touched her arm. "Wait," he murmured. They stood just outside the restaurant under the streetlight. A second later, a car on the street screeched as it sped past, two men on motorcycles chasing close behind it, engines roaring into the night. The commotion echoed down the narrow lane and was gone just as fast. Chiara realized her heart had jumped at the sudden noise. "Just some reckless kids racing," she said, trying to sound casual, though adrenaline had prickled through her. She looked at Lorenzo. He was standing very still, hand lightly gripping her forearm as if to shield her from stepping off the curb. His expression was unreadable behind those ever-present glasses, but he released her arm gently. "Yes, of course," he replied, though something in his tone made Chiara suspect he wasn't convinced. Before she could dwell on it, Matteo arrived to open the car door, and Lorenzo bid her good night as usual. Still, as the car drove away, Chiara couldn't shake the feeling that Lorenzo had been expecting something worse than just reckless drivers. That wasn't the only such instance. Another time, on a quiet weekday, a man in a leather jacket lurked outside the trattoria for an hour without coming in. Chiara noticed him through the front window, a bulky figure seemingly watching. She mentioned it to Lorenzo casually, since he always sat facing that way. "There's a man out there who's been standing on the corner. It's odd he hasn't come in or left," she said, keeping her voice light. Lorenzo's hand paused on his wineglass. He turned his head slightly. "Oh, perhaps he's waiting for someone." But Chiara saw the slight crease in his brow. He asked softly, "Is he still there now?" Peering over, she saw the corner empty. The man was gone. "No, he's left," she reported. "Probably nothing." Lorenzo gave a tight nod, but his grip on the glass remained tense a moment longer. Chiara almost felt she had imagined the entire thing, the man, and Lorenzo's reaction. In hindsight, maybe she shouldn't have mentioned it. Yet every time such incidents happened, they were quickly forgotten in the comfort of each other's company. If Lorenzo carried any burdens or fears, he concealed them well behind courteous smiles and gentle jokes when talking with her, and Chiara found herself wanting to alleviate that unknown weight for him, an impulse that startled her when she recognized it. She cared about him, more than she probably should. Late one Friday night, about 2 weeks after that first meeting, the trattoria was closing up, and Lorenzo was the last patron to depart. A summer storm had blown in while he dined, drenching the streets outside. Thunder rumbled in the distance. "You can't possibly walk to the car in this downpour," Chiara exclaimed as she stood with him at the door. Rain pelted the cobbled street beyond, bouncing off parked cars. Most patrons had left hurriedly to avoid the storm, but Lorenzo had remained, unconcerned. Matteo was already pulling the car around, its headlights cutting through the downpour as it stopped right by the restaurant's awning. Still, there was a gap of a few meters with no shelter. "Allow me," Chiara said impulsively. She grabbed an oversized umbrella from the stand near the coat rack, kept for guests on such nights, and stepped outside. Wind tugged at her ponytail and cool mist dampened her face. She opened the umbrella and held it over the short distance between the awning and the open car door. "This way, Lorenzo." She reached for his free hand to guide him. He took her hand, but instead of the usual light touch on her elbow, he intertwined his fingers with hers as she led him forward. Chiara's breath caught at the intimate grasp. Together, they splashed through the puddles, the umbrella barely shielding their shoulders from the sideways spray. She could feel the strength in his grip, and also the trust. It stirred something fiercely protective in her. At the car, Matteo waited with the door. Before Lorenzo released her hand, he turned toward Chiara, so close that the rain-dappled fabric of his suit jacket brushed her arm. "Thank you, Chiara," he said over the drumming rain. His voice was deep, almost lost in the storm, but she caught a certain tenderness in it. Their faces were inches apart under the small umbrella. Chiara realized with a jolt that if he were not blind, this would be the moment where their eyes locked. Instead, she found herself staring at the rain droplets clinging to his hair and wishing she could see the eyes hidden behind those glasses. What would they reveal if she could look into them right now? Lightning flickered, and in its flash she saw his jaw tighten as if fighting an impulse. Was he feeling this strange pull between them too? The urge to step just a little closer was almost overpowering. For a heartbeat, the rest of the world, the storm, the street, everything fell away. Then a car horn blared down the street, breaking the spell. Lorenzo cleared his throat. He released Chiara's hand slowly, as if unwilling to part. "Good night," he said, the formality of his tone returning, but gently so. "Good night, Lorenzo," she replied, voice soft. He ducked into the car, out of the rain, and Matteo shut the door. Chiara stepped back under the awning, closing the umbrella, her heart pounding in her ears. She watched the car's taillights disappear into the storm, 1,000 unspoken words swirling like the rain. That night, she barely noticed Giulia's knowing smirk as they locked up. Her mind and heart were far away, lost in the memory of Lorenzo's fingers entwined with hers, and the undeniable spark that had passed between them under the stormy Naples sky. As Chiara fell asleep to the sound of rain against her window, she realized she was in deep trouble. She was falling for him, this mysterious man who had walked into her life by chance and made her feel seen in ways she hadn't before. And she knew so little about him. "Who are you, really, Lorenzo?" she wondered. That question drifted in her mind as she surrendered to dreams. 2 days later, Chiara's world began to tilt on its axis. It started innocently enough, during the lull between lunch and dinner shifts at the trattoria. She was polishing cutlery when Giulia poked her head into the kitchen, looking unusually serious. "Chiara, there's someone here asking for you," Giulia said quietly. "He says he's with the police." Chiara's stomach did an uneasy flip. The police? For me? She quickly racked her brain. Had she done something wrong? Giulia simply shrugged and gestured for her to follow. In the front of the house, near the bar, a man in a cheap gray suit waited, flipping through a small notebook. He looked to be in his 40s, with thinning hair and a weary expression. As Chiara approached, he gave a tight smile. "Miss Bianchi?" "Yes, I'm Chiara," she said, exchanging a nervous glance with Giulia. Her friend lingered nearby, wiping an already clean section of counter, clearly curious and concerned. "I'm Detective Marco Rinaldi." The man flashed an official-looking badge and ID. "Do you have a moment? It's about a certain patron who has been coming here recently." Chiara's heart skipped. In that instant, she knew this was about Lorenzo. Had something happened to him? Or, her mind leapt to darker possibilities. Was this about his wealth? Maybe unpaid taxes or something mundane? Surely nothing serious. "Yes, I suppose," she said. "Should we sit?" The detective nodded, and they took seats at an empty table. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "We have reason to believe that a wanted criminal has been frequenting this establishment, likely under an assumed identity. We're seeking information from staff who might have interacted with him." Chiara felt a chill, but forced herself to stay calm. "A criminal? Do you know his name?" she asked carefully. Rinaldi consulted his notebook. "We suspect he goes by Lorenzo Caruso. Have you served anyone by that name? Perhaps someone with a visual impairment?" His gaze sharpened on her. Her blood ran cold. "Lorenzo Caruso?" She shook her head automatically. "I only know a customer named Lorenzo. I don't know his last name. He is visually impaired." "Yes." Her voice faltered. "What is he wanted for?" The detective's lips pressed into a grim line. "Caruso is believed to be a high-ranking member of the Camorra." Seeing her confusion, he clarified, "The local Mafia. In fact, intelligence indicates he's one of the bosses vying for power in a recent turf war. He's extremely dangerous, Miss Bianchi." Chiara's head swam. She could scarcely reconcile the kind, soft-spoken man who held her hand in the rain with the words, "Mafia boss." She opened her mouth to deny it, but fragments of memory intruded. Lorenzo's subtle tension at loud noises, the lurking man outside, the mysterious car chase. Signs she'd noticed but naively dismissed. There must be a mistake, she murmured, though her voice lacked conviction. Rinaldi's eyes were sympathetic. He pulled a photo from his jacket and slid it across the table. This was taken 2 years ago in Milan. Chiara picked up the picture. It showed a younger-looking Lorenzo, without glasses, stepping out of an expensive car. His face was unmistakable, those strong features, the proud set of his shoulders. She realized with a surge of dread that he wasn't using a cane, and flanking him on either side were 2 men holding submachine guns, half concealed by their coats. Her hand trembled, and Giulia, who had crept closer, gasped softly over Chiara's shoulder. Dio, Giulia breathed. That's him, isn't it? Chiara's world felt upside down. She set the photo down, struggling for breath. The detective lowered his voice further. I know this is a shock. People like Caruso are very good at pretending to be something they're not. They deceive good people like you. He's never hurt me, Chiara managed to say, barely above a whisper. Let's keep it that way. Rinaldi straightened a little. Miss Bianchi, we need your help. Men like Caruso are hard to get close to, but he's let his guard down by coming here. Frankly, we were surprised to learn he's been posing as a blind man. Clever trick to appear harmless. But it seems he trusts you. Chiara felt Giulia's hand find hers under the table, giving a supportive squeeze. She didn't know what to think, what to feel. Anger? Fear? A strange ache was spreading through her chest, the sting of betrayal. Lorenzo had lied from the very beginning, lied about something so fundamental. What do you want me to do? Chiara asked, hearing the hurt in her own voice. Nothing dangerous, Rinaldi assured quickly. Just continue as normal. Don't let him suspect anything. We plan to move in soon, possibly the next time he shows up here. If you can let us know when he's here, or better yet, keep him here longer once he arrives, that will help. We'll take care of the rest. You're going to arrest him? She asked, eyes brimming with tears she fought to hold back. The detective nodded. If all goes smoothly. But be aware, men like Caruso can be unpredictable. He didn't finish the thought. He didn't have to. Chiara's heart clenched painfully. She remembered Lorenzo's gentle touch on her hand, the way his laugh warmed her, the vulnerability he'd shown her in quiet moments. Was any of it real? Or was she just an assignment, a test, as cold and calculated as this detective implied? How can I contact you? Chiara heard herself ask, though it felt like someone else speaking. Detective Rinaldi slid a plain business card across to her. A phone number was printed on it. Call or text when he arrives. We'll be nearby, ready. And Miss Bianchi? He added as she numbly tucked the card into her apron. Please be careful. If Caruso even suspects, he might, just be careful. Act normal. He stood up, gently patting her shoulder. You're doing the right thing. People like him destroy lives. We'll keep you safe, I promise. With that, the detective gave a cordial nod to Giulia and walked out, leaving the restaurant as quietly as he'd come. Chiara sat there, staring at nothing. Her hand in Giulia's had gone clammy. Chiara, Giulia ventured softly. What are you going to do? A tear finally escaped down Chiara's cheek, followed by another. She quickly wiped her face, standing shakily. I don't know, she whispered. This can't be true. He's so... She couldn't even find the words. Kind, gentle, good. How could he be what they said? But the photo had been damning. And more than that, her own memory was damning. She had seen signs and ignored them. She felt foolish and heartbroken. Maybe he's not as bad as they say, Giulia offered weakly. But her voice lacked conviction. She had seen the evidence too. Chiara pressed her palms to her eyes. If he's been lying about being blind, he lied to me every day, she said, voice trembling. Why? Just to test me, like I'm some pawn in his game? Bitterness crept in, but beneath it, pain. Giulia wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Whatever the reason, he had no right, she murmured. Listen, if that detective is right, you're not safe if you warn him or something. Maybe it's best to let the police handle it. Chiara stiffened at the thought of doing nothing while armed officers swarmed Lorenzo. The image of him being dragged off in cuffs or worse flashed in her mind. Despite everything, she didn't want him hurt. He's not coming tonight anyway, she said hollowly, hoping that was true. Lorenzo had mentioned this morning, in a brief text via the restaurant's phone, that he might not be by until the weekend due to some business. That gave her a day or two to process. Okay, Giulia nodded. Maybe talk to him. Get him to surrender? I don't know. She looked as lost as Chiara felt. Chiara just shook her head. I need to think. She stepped away from Giulia's comforting arm. I have to get some air. Without waiting for a reply, she hurried out the back door into the alley behind the trattoria. There, in the dim afternoon light, next to the trash bins awaiting pickup, Chiara braced herself against the cool stone wall and let the tears come properly. Hot, angry tears of confusion and betrayal. She felt foolish for letting herself fall for a stranger with secrets. She felt terrified that the sweetness she'd seen was a lie, but a stubborn part of her heart insisted that Lorenzo had been genuine in those moments with her. Could both things be true? Could he be a good man and a criminal at once? Chiara didn't know how long she stood there, trembling and trying to catch her breath, before she heard Giulia's voice calling her back inside to prepare for the dinner shift. She pocketed the detective's card with a shaking hand. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: her life was not going to remain the same. The following evening, Chiara went to work with dread churning in her stomach. Each time the door opened, she felt a jolt of apprehension that it might be Lorenzo, or the police, or worse. Part of her prayed he wouldn't show up, that she'd have more time to sort out the storm of emotions inside her. But as fate would have it, Lorenzo came that night, earlier than usual. Chiara spotted him stepping into the restaurant around 7, guided as always by his cane. He wore a navy suit tonight, crisp and striking. Her heart simultaneously leapt and sank. She forced a smile onto her face, hoping it didn't look as brittle as it felt. Good evening, Lorenzo, she greeted, her voice tight. Instantly, she sensed him pause. Though his glasses were turned toward her, she felt as if his gaze pierced through her. Buonasera, Chiara, he said warmly, but with a faint question in his tone. It's good to hear you. She guided him to his usual table on unsteady legs. Her mind raced. He's here. What do I do? Detective Rinaldi's card felt heavy in her apron pocket. She hadn't intended to summon them tonight, hadn't even decided if she would. But if Lorenzo truly was a dangerous criminal, could she justify protecting him? And if he wasn't, as the detective claimed, why had he deceived her? As Lorenzo settled into his seat, Chiara realized he was still waiting, silent, as though expecting her to speak. She realized belatedly that she hadn't given him a menu or asked for his order. Sorry, she stammered, placing the menu in his hands. The specials tonight are... Chiara, he interrupted softly. His voice was low, pitched for her ears alone amidst the background chatter. Is everything all right? Her breath hitched. His question was gentle, concerned, so achingly genuine it almost broke her resolve. She opened her mouth, an apology or accusation or confession burning to leap out. But nothing came. Across the room, she saw Giulia watching, worry etched on her face. In that moment, Chiara made a choice. Hands trembling, she reached into her pocket and beneath her notepad, pressed the sequence of buttons on her phone to send a single text to the number Detective Rinaldi had given. He's here. The message sent, she forced herself to reply to Lorenzo in as normal a tone as she could muster. I'm fine, just a little tired, she lied, picking up the thread. The specials tonight are eggplant parmigiana and a rosemary risotto. Lorenzo's head tilted. He didn't look convinced by her answer. But after a beat, he nodded. I'll trust your recommendation, as always. Whichever you think, and a glass of the house red. She scribbled the order and hurried off, needing to be away from the intensity of his presence before she fell apart. In the kitchen, her heart was thudding so loudly she thought the chef could hear it. They're coming. Oh God, what have I done? She thought in a panic. How would they move in? Would they storm in with guns? What if someone got hurt? What if Lorenzo got hurt? Back out on the floor, time seemed to crawl and race all at once. As Chiara served other customers, she stole glances at Lorenzo. He sat calmly at table 7, but he hadn't touched his wine. Instead, he seemed to be listening. His focus was not on the meal, but outward, as if reading the room's mood. Was he sensing her anxiety? When she brought out the risotto, she nearly jumped as he spoke quietly. Your hands are shaking. He reached out suddenly and gently closed a hand around her wrist. It was a light hold, but it stopped her cold. Tell me what's wrong, Chiara. Her throat closed up. How could he always read her so easily? She couldn't form an answer. In the same moment, the front door of the trattoria swung open, and several figures poured in swiftly, too swiftly. Chiara recognized Detective Rinaldi at the forefront, now clad in a bulletproof vest with Polizia emblazoned across it. Behind him were at least 4 other armed men in civilian clothes but bearing badges. Patrons gasped and ducked out of the way as the men spread through the restaurant. Guns drawn. "Lorenzo Caruso!" Rinaldi shouted, his earlier mildness gone, replaced with authority. "Don't move! Police!" The other officers fanned out, training their handguns on table 7. A collective scream rose from a few diners. Several dropped to the floor. Others bolted out the door. Julia peeked out from behind the bar, eyes wide in terror. Chiara's heart imploded with fear. This was really happening. "Lorenzo," she whispered, instinctively stepping closer to him. To her astonishment, Lorenzo remained utterly composed. His hand slipped from her wrist, and he slowly raised both hands in a gesture of compliance. For a man supposedly blind, he had unerringly turned his head toward Rinaldi's voice with a cold, steady calm. "May I ask what this is about, officers?" he said, voice level. Rinaldi edged closer, pistol trained. "Lorenzo Caruso, you are under arrest for suspicion of extortion, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit murder." His tone was terse. "Get on your knees. Hands behind your head. Now!" Time seemed to freeze. Chiara was barely breathing. Lorenzo, still seated, inclined his head as if acquiescing. But then, everything happened at once. One of the armed men lunged forward to grab Lorenzo's arm. In a blur of motion, Lorenzo moved. His left hand snatched the man's wrist mid-grab, an impossibly fast reflex for a blind man, and twisted. The officer, or rather, attacker, because now Chiara realized these men's faces held a vicious intent far beyond a simple arrest, yelled in pain as bones cracked audibly. Gasps echoed. In the same heartbeat, Lorenzo rose from his chair with a fluidity that sent it toppling backward. His other hand drove forward into the gut of a second man who rushed him. That man doubled over, wheezing. Chaos erupted. 2 more gunmen opened fire. Glass shattered as bullets hit wine bottles on tables and mirrors on the wall. Diners screamed and crawled for cover. Chiara stood paralyzed for a split second, horrified at the violence exploding around her. Then a strong arm, Lorenzo's arm, hooked around her waist and pulled her down behind the heavy wood of an upturned table. "Stay down," he commanded, no trace of his usual gentle tone. This was a voice of authority, fierce, protective. She dropped to the floor, covering her head as another shot rang out. Ears ringing, Chiara peeked up to see Lorenzo, incredibly, wielding the first gunman's pistol, which he must have snatched in the scuffle. He fired 2 shots in quick succession at the remaining attackers, who had taken cover behind a pillar. One thug cried out, hit in the shoulder, collapsing with a curse. The last man snarled and returned fire, wood splintering above Chiara's crouched form. Lorenzo pressed her further down, shielding her with his body without hesitation. At that moment, through the haze of fear, Chiara's eyes caught a glimpse of Lorenzo's face. His sunglasses had been knocked askew in the melee, and for the first time she saw his eyes. Steely gray and sharp with focus, they were nothing like a blind man's. They were alive with acute awareness, with anger and concern, as he glanced at her to make sure she was safe. Her heart lurched at the confirmation of what she already knew. He could see. He had been able to see all along. The final attacker, realizing he was outmatched, suddenly lunged out, gun aimed not at Lorenzo but at Chiara. Chiara's blood went cold as she found herself staring down the barrel of his handgun. "Drop it, Caruso, or I shoot her!" the man shouted. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. He stood a pace in front of Chiara now, his own gun trained steadily on the thug. Chiara scrambled up to a half-kneeling position, fear pulsing through her. She could see the man's finger whitening on the trigger. "Lorenzo, don't!" she cried, afraid he might trade his life for hers. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Rain from a broken sprinkler pipe, triggered by a stray bullet hitting the ceiling, began to spray down, soaking the scene in a surreal drizzle. Lorenzo's voice cut through the chaos, low and deadly calm. "You don't want to do this," he warned the man, eyes like ice. "Harming her will only make your death slower." The thug sneered, pressing forward. "Big words from a blind man," he spat. But Lorenzo was already moving. In a single decisive motion, he pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked. The attacker's weapon clattered from his hand as he howled. A precise shot had torn through his forearm. The man fell to his knees, clutching his ruined arm, rainwater and blood mingling at his side. It was over. Silence fell save for the patter of water and the sobs of a terrified patron by the door. Lorenzo exhaled slowly, lowering the gun. Chiara was shaking all over, a sob caught in her throat. None of it felt real. The shattered glass, the smoking gun, The men sprawled on the floor, moaning. Before she could process, Lorenzo turned to her. Water dripped from his hair and face. His glasses were gone, fully revealing those storm-gray eyes now filled with urgent concern. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his voice rough. She couldn't find her voice. She managed a shake of her head, though tears were streaming down her cheeks from shock. Lorenzo closed his eyes briefly in relief. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Neighbors had likely called the police. The real police. Lorenzo's expression hardened. He gently but firmly took Chiara by the arm and helped her to her feet. "We need to go, Adesso. Now," he said. Chiara pulled back instinctively. Go? With him? She stared at him. This man she thought she knew, who was now revealed in stark reality. Blood spatter flecked his collar. A gun was still clenched in his fist. He followed her gaze and immediately discarded the weapon, kicking it away. "Chiara, please," he implored, his tone softer but urgent. "More will come. You're not safe here." She wavered, mind reeling. Everything she had believed about him was shattered, yet he had just risked his life to protect her. Beyond them, Giulia emerged from behind the bar, eyes huge with shock. The restaurant was wrecked. Patrons were stumbling out, panicked. Rinaldi, the fake detective, lay unconscious near the door, likely knocked out in the chaos. As Chiara's eyes swept over the scene, she realized with dawning horror that this bloodshed was partly her doing. She had texted them to come. A sob of guilt choked her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, not even sure who she was apologizing to. Lorenzo, Giulia, everyone. Lorenzo gently cupped her face, turning it toward him. The gesture was shockingly intimate amidst the destruction. "Look at me," he said. And she did, seeing those eyes up close for the first time, clear, stormy, filled with intensity. "This is not your fault. They deceived you. I promise, I will explain everything. But right now, I need to get you somewhere safe." Behind them, Matteo staggered in through the busted front door, pistol drawn and suit askew. He must have been outside waiting in the car when things went down. "Boss, we have to move," Matteo panted, relief flooding his face when he saw Lorenzo alive and Chiara unharmed. Lorenzo nodded, his hand still cradling Chiara's cheek. "Chiara, I'm begging you, come with me now. If you stay, the police or whoever these bastards really are will only hurt you." Chiara's lip trembled. She glanced helplessly at Giulia. Her friend stood amid the shattered glass, tears on her face, but she gave a tiny nod as if to say, "Go." 1,000 thoughts warred in Chiara's head, but sirens were closing in, and she had no time. Finally, she found herself nodding. "Oh, okay," she managed. Relief washed over Lorenzo's features. Without another word, he wrapped an arm around her and guided her swiftly out into the night, Matteo leading the way. Outside, a black SUV screeched to a halt, another of Lorenzo's men at the wheel. Matteo jumped into the front. Lorenzo tucked Chiara into the back seat beside him, and the car roared off just as red and blue lights flashed at the far end of the block. Chiara pressed herself against the seat, breathing hard. As they sped through the labyrinthine streets of Naples, she could no longer hold back the anguished cry that tore from her throat. "Lorenzo, what have I done? What have you done?" Her voice cracked with heartbreak and fear. Lorenzo reached for her hand, but she pulled it away, fresh tears brimming. They stared at each other through the dim interior of the car. No more secrets, no more lies, nothing but raw truth in their eyes, and an uncertain road ahead. They drove through the night to the outskirts of the city, eventually turning down a secluded lane flanked by olive trees. The safe house, a modest country villa perched on a hill, was quiet and dark when they arrived. As the SUV rolled to a stop, Chiara realized her hands were still trembling in her lap. Everything felt surreal. Lorenzo guided her inside gently, his palm resting against the small of her back. The interior lights flickered on to reveal a comfortable, rustic living space. Matteo and the driver swept the perimeter, and then, satisfied it was secure, gave Lorenzo a nod before retreating to stand guard outside, giving them privacy. For a long moment, Chiara and Lorenzo stood in silence in the lamplight. Thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. The same storm was moving inland. Chiara broke away from his touch, walking shakily toward an armchair but not sitting, her arms wrapped around herself, as if she could hold in the storm of feelings. Lorenzo watched her, anguish etched on his features. Without the pretense of blindness, he stood differently, taller, confidence shaded by weariness. He took a cautious step toward her. "Chiara, is it true?" she interrupted softly, staring at the wooden floor. Are you who they said? He didn't ask for clarification. He knew what she meant. My name is Lorenzo Caruso, he answered, voice low. And yes, I have another life, beyond what you saw at the restaurant. He paused, searching for words. I have responsibilities, people who answer to me. Some would call me a mafia boss, yes, he said it evenly, but his eyes were filled with regret. Chiara closed her eyes as a tear slipped down. Hearing him confirm it hit her like a blow, even though she already knew. She felt him step closer. Please look at me, Lorenzo pleaded. She raised her eyes to his. It was still so strange to actually meet his gaze, to see the intensity of those gray eyes unlocked from behind dark lenses. She almost wished for the sunglasses back, to hide the raw honesty she found there. I'm sorry, he said, voice thick. I'm so sorry I lied to you. I never wanted to hurt you. He ran a hand through his hair, droplets of rainwater flicking off. When I walked into Trattoria Alberto that first night, it was just supposed to be a test. I was investigating rumors of theft among the staff of a business partner's restaurant, trying to see who I could trust. He shook his head. But then I met you, and you were so genuine, kind. You returned my wallet without a second thought, even with everything you're going through. Chiara bit her lip, emotions warring within her, anger, hurt, and a flicker of compassion hearing the anguish in his tone. After that, I admit I kept up the charade because I wanted to be around you, he continued, his voice trembling slightly. Selfishly, I realized that pretending to need your help gave me a chance to know you. It was wrong. I see that now. But you have to understand, trust, for me, is a rare currency. In my world, everyone has ulterior motives. I needed to be sure of you. And you proved yourself time and again to be honest and loyal. Far more than I deserved. He swallowed hard. I should have told you the truth sooner. I was a coward. I was afraid I'd lose the only real good thing I'd found in years. Chiara swiped at her tears angrily. You say you trusted me, but you never actually did. You were just playing a role, testing me like a lab rat. Her voice rose, years of buried hurt and the fresh sting of betrayal giving it force. Do you know how humiliating that is, Lorenzo? You toyed with my feelings, all while laughing behind those glasses at how naive I was. Her voice cracked. No, Lorenzo said fiercely. It wasn't like that. I never laughed at you. God, Chiara. I was in awe of you. Every day I spent with you, I felt hope. Like maybe I could still be the man I was before all of this. His hand gestured vaguely, meaning the violence, the crime, the life he led. Chiara's eyes searched his face. He looked as broken as she felt. She thought of the gentle man who'd held an umbrella over her, who listened to her dreams. Was that all a lie? But the tenderness in his eyes now seemed very real. I never meant for you to get caught in the crossfire of my troubles, Lorenzo went on softly. That's why I tried to keep things slow. I told myself I'd keep visiting you as Lorenzo the blind man just a little longer, that I wouldn't pull you any deeper. But I failed. Tonight proved that. He exhaled shakily. If I could trade my life for yours to be safe, I would do it in a heartbeat. Chiara's breath caught. Don't say that. Don't you dare say that. Anger flared, mixed with despair. My life was safe until you stumbled into it. Do you realize what position I'm in now? My workplace is ruined. My future... Her voice wobbled. My heart is in shambles. I could be arrested for aiding you, or killed by your enemies. Everything is upside down. Because of you. Each word hit Lorenzo like a lash. She could see it in the way he flinched. She almost regretted them, but they were true. He bowed his head. You're right, he murmured. I've brought danger and pain into your life, and I can never forgive myself for that. For a moment, the only sound was distant thunder and the soft ticking of a clock on the mantel. Chiara shivered, the night's damp and shock finally creeping into her bones. Almost absently, Lorenzo slipped off his suit jacket. He approached and draped it around her shoulders. She allowed it, too exhausted to resist the warmth it offered. As he pulled his hands back, Chiara noticed a streak of blood on his white shirt sleeve. Her eyes widened. You're hurt, she said, pointing with trembling fingers. Lorenzo glanced down, then dismissed it. It's nothing, just a scratch. But Chiara stepped closer, concern overriding her turmoil for just an instant. She gingerly rolled up his sleeve to reveal a grazed furrow along his upper arm, where a bullet or fragment had skimmed him. Dried blood stained the fabric around it. "Nothing?" she murmured incredulously. Without thinking, she moved to the kitchen, finding a dishcloth and wetting it under the tap. She returned and carefully dabbed at the wound. Lorenzo sucked in a breath but stood still, letting her tend to him. Her hands were gentle, focused on the small task. Chiara felt a strange calm amidst the chaos of her emotions. This man had thrown her life into disarray, yet here she was, cleaning his wound, because despite everything, she couldn't stand to see him hurt. "Chiara," Lorenzo whispered as she finished tying the cloth around his arm. She didn't meet his gaze, concentrating on the makeshift bandage. "I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you now, but I need you to know, every moment I spent with you was real to me. The laughter, the conversations, that night in the rain." His voice dropped huskily at the memory. "None of that was pretend. Blind or not, I saw you, and I fell." He stopped himself, the words catching. Chiara's hands stilled. She finally looked up, and there it was on his face, unguarded love and regret, laid bare at last. "You fell what?" she asked softly, her heart pounding. Lorenzo's eyes glistened. "I fell in love with you." The confession hung in the air, raw and earnest. "I know I have no right to, but I do. And whatever happens now, you deserve to know that." A cracked sob escaped her lips. She had been holding herself so tightly, trying to be angry enough to push him away, but his words melted something inside her that she'd thought shattered. "How can you love me, after what I did?" She thought of her text to Rinaldi, of nearly getting him killed. Lorenzo looked astonished. "You think you betrayed me? Chiara, you were deceived by them just as I deceived you. They used your good heart against you. I never, ever blamed you for that." He gently took her hands, and this time she let him. His warmth seeped into her cold fingers. "If anything, I owe you an apology for putting you in that position." Chiara broke into quiet tears. "I was so afraid they would hurt you. And then when I saw you with that gun, I didn't know who you were anymore." She searched his face imploringly. "Maybe I still don't. Are you the kind man who held my hand under an umbrella? Or are you the one who shot a man tonight without flinching?" His grip on her hands tightened as he answered, voice hoarse. "I am both, and I hate that truth. I was gentle with you because that's who you make me want to be, but I will also be ruthless to protect you, or anyone I care about." A tear slid down his cheek now, unexpected. "My life has been full of violence for so long. I had accepted that I was a monster, but you made me feel like a man again. A man who could cherish something pure. I never wanted you to see the monster, but tonight you did." Chiara reached up impulsively and brushed away his tear. Lorenzo inhaled sharply at her touch. "Perhaps I did," she said, voice trembling, "but I also saw the man who shielded me with his own body, who saved my life." Her fingers lingered against the rough stubble on his jaw, the intimacy bridging a gap that fear had carved. "You're right. I don't know everything about you, and I'm still angry and hurt, but I know you're not heartless. If you were, I'd be dead, or worse." He closed his eyes. I'm leaning subtly into her hand before she withdrew it. "I would rather die than let anything happen to you," he said quietly, and she knew it wasn't hyperbole. For a moment, neither spoke. The thunder had quieted, leaving only the patter of light rain on the roof. Chiara felt the weight of the day heavy on her, but also the weight of his confession, and hers still unspoken outright. She had fallen for him too, deeply, however crazy that was. That love battled with her conscience and fear. But it was there, steady as her heartbeat. "So what now?" she whispered at last. "Everything's ruined. I can't go back to my old life, can I?" Lorenzo looked pained. "Not for the time being, no. Those men tonight, they were sent by a rival of mine. They targeted you because I showed I cared for you. They'll try again, or the authorities will. Either way, Naples isn't safe for you now." He drew a shaky breath. "I can keep you safe, but it means leaving here, coming with me." Chiara's heart thumped loudly in her ears. Here it was, the crossroad she'd never imagined facing. "Go with you. As what?" she asked softly. "Your hostage? Your responsibility?" She needed him to say it. Lorenzo stepped forward, closing the last of the distance between them. His hands gently framed her face, tilting it up. "As the woman I love," he said. "Under my protection, yes, but free. I will take you anywhere in the world you want to go. I'll spend my life making up for what I've done to yours. If you can ever forgive me. If you can ever trust me again." His voice broke on the last words, revealing the vulnerability of a man who, for once, did not know if he would get his way. Tears glistened in Chiara's eyes once more, but this time they were not solely tears of pain. "Lorenzo," she covered his hands on her cheeks with her own. "I don't know if it's wise or right, but my heart wants to trust you. It always has." A tiny shaky smile appeared on her lips. "I think I fell in love with you too, in spite of all my better judgment." A soft sob laugh escaped her. "You infuriating man!" A breath of relief left him, half a laugh of his own, as his forehead fell against hers. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Probably not," she teased gently, sniffing back tears. "But we don't get to choose who we love, do we?" He let out a trembling chuckle. For a moment, they stayed like that, heads bowed together as if in prayer. Then Lorenzo tilted his head and pressed a tender kiss to Chiara's forehead. It was a cautious, reverent kiss, filled with all the unspoken gratitude and emotion he couldn't yet put into words. Chiara closed her eyes at the warmth of his lips against her skin. She realized she was crying again, but the tears were strangely soothing. "We'll leave tonight," Lorenzo murmured, pulling back just enough to meet her eyes. "I have a plane. Matteo will make sure we're not followed. We can go somewhere far away, start fresh." Chiara took a shaky breath. Leaving Naples meant abandoning the life she'd known, her studies, friends like Julia, her mother, though she could be contacted from afar. It was overwhelming. But standing here in Lorenzo's arms, the steady beat of his heart under her palm, she knew one thing for certain. Life without him felt even more impossible. "Okay," she whispered. "Take me away from here." Lorenzo's eyes closed in palpable relief. "Thank you," he breathed, resting his forehead against hers once more. "I swear, Chiara. And I will protect you, with every resource and every drop of blood I have." She believed him. In spite of everything, she believed him. He gently took her hand. "We should go. The jet will be ready within an hour." He hesitated. "Is there anything you need to do? Anyone you must call?" Chiara thought of her mother. She would send word once safe. A white lie about a sudden job abroad, perhaps. Julia, dear Julia. She would understand. "Not now," she said. "It can wait." Together they walked out into the damp night. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and cool. Matteo hurried to pull the car around, and Lorenzo helped Chiara into the back seat before sliding in beside her. As the engine started, Chiara realized her hand was still entwined with Lorenzo's. She tightened her grip slightly. He responded in kind, a subtle squeeze that promised she would never face anything alone again. The car drove off down the winding road, leaving the villa behind. In the east, the first light of dawn was just beginning to break, softening the dark sky to gray. Chiara leaned her head against Lorenzo's shoulder. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Whatever lay ahead, danger, or peace, or a battle for redemption, they would meet it together. In the hush before sunrise, Chiara closed her eyes, letting the steady rhythm of Lorenzo's heartbeat calm the last of her fears. The future was uncertain, but one truth was clear. Against all odds, love had found them in the darkness, and it would guide them into the light of a new day.